4 days in, not a lot yet left to tell you or to tell you from this team. I really like this team. Our kids have had a really good summer. Really proud of what they've done. You know, we've had very efficient practices so far, but we still haven't had a full padded practice, so to be able to give you in-depth anything probably would be really unfair today. But with that said, I'll give you what I got. To where we are today, comparable to where we were 3 years ago, and just in terms of player-driven leadership, you know, the intent that we go day to day with is drastically different than where we were year one, and that is so truly a credit to our kids and their investment in each other, their investment in getting better. Like I said, we had a great summer. We've got a great strength coach. We've got great assistant coaches. But one thing that's really fun right now as you look at this roster is we've got great leadership on our football team. I'll be honest with you, I think maybe the light really came on for me is practice one this fall camp. Kyle, it was really fun to watch Kyle this summer. You saw a confident young man. Repetition is the mother of all learning, right? And then you get the repetition in the environment of football and playing the game where it really matters, we're keeping score. And Kyle got that last year. And, you know, I think one thing that allowed him to do was say, how do I evaluate what I did well and what I didn't do well, and then how do I drive myself forward? And what was really fun for me, and you know, even just watching these early practices, is it's almost like, wow, who is this kid in terms of he's got really confident, he understands the system, he's another year in, he's made those mistakes, so he's not making those same mistakes anymore. He just looks like a really polished football player. Bowl game was the only time that we had the ability to end the game, you know, where we were able offensively to put an end to it. And, you know, I think one of the things that if we look at our past, that's something that has been critical to our success is helping that defense out and understanding clock management and game management. And one of the things offensively that you can help your team out is certainly keeping the ball in bounds, understanding the ability to keep the clock running and have a knowledge of the game, and that the offensive line's got to take pride in that. Our team will make great movement if our offensive line can take a step forward. Well, I think athleticism is the first thing when you talk about Julian Good-Jones. He's got very high-end athleticism, which has certainly allowed him to have position flexibility amongst the offensive line. And the one nice thing for us is we're trying to kind of figure out who are the 5 best linemen and putting everybody in position to be successful. He gives us that ability to do it. He's not just a guy that can play one spot. So I think that athletic ability that he possesses has allowed him to play. You know, I think his next step now is, do you become a truly, you know, own your craft and take your game to a level that we all think he's got the ability to go. Let me talk Matt Eaton before I talk Landon Akers, just because, you know, Matt's a senior. B, if you said, Coach, 4 days, the guy that stuck out the most to you that had a phenomenal offseason is Matt Eaton. I mean, Matt, I'm really proud of Matt. You know, Matt has never had the ability to have a healthy spring and really a healthy fall camp. I think you saw the emergence of Matt midway through the season. That Texas Tech game and on through there really became a productive asset to us in that receiver group. And you know, one of the things that's been really fun is to watch Matt's growth. And you know, Landon kind of had the same movement this spring as some of our really good young guys have. Landon last year earned the right to get some of those kickoff return reps and get some game experience, which I think was really big. Football's really important to Landon Akers, and he has something that, you know, we can't coach, and that's high-end speed. And, you know, one of the things that's been really fun to watch him is kind of gain that confidence in playing the receiver position, and now not just be a fast guy, but actually be a fast guy that is a really good wide receiver. But both guys that I think you'll see are very valuable to what we need to do in the receiving game. I've always said this, the TCU game we didn't play super great in the first half, but in the second half of that game, I saw our team actually fight. And I thought that piece was a turning point. We can start to push this in a positive way. I think we came home, we won a game, and then all of a sudden, you saw at least our kids started to say, you know what, maybe we can have some success here. We believe this thing can turn in a positive way. And we learned some valuable lessons that first year of, why did we not have success in those games that were starting to become very close games, but we would always lose them at the end. And I've said this always, that we really earned the right to lose those games, because those times that we should have been working on winning football games, we were worrying about, tying your shoes the right way, wearing the right clothes to practice, going to class, starting behind the line, finishing through the line. Those things were missing, and that's just honest. I thought what the Oklahoma game did is at some point you have to have a moment, an aha moment. This can get done. And I think that gave us at least the ability to say, all this work, the time, the effort, what we're talking about, what we're doing, it is validated. Now how do we move and continue to push ourselves forward? So, I think the next step for us is, it's kind of like I said, number one, the consistency piece of it, and something that we really haven't had a great deal of in this program. And then number two is the player-led leadership. When you become an elite level football program, 90% of the time it's the players leading, 10% of the time the coaches are leading. I know all these coaches across the country think, we all have all the answers and the kids want to hear us, but really they don't. They want to hear each other lead them and talk to them and buy into it. And I think that's that culture shift that you're always trying to get it to. I'd say Keem Butler was pretty good last year, so from his standpoint, I think it's proven a little bit. The proof's in the pudding. You're talking about a guy that explosive plays downfield. Maybe he was the best guy on our football team last year doing that for us. I think for him, again, confidence in his game, how do you become in that consistency level, continue to take that up, another level. But, obviously Allen having those two being a great complement to each other a year ago, not so much who are those other guys now that get a chance to step into the picture and join Hakeem and Allen in terms of being very main focal points for our offense.
Touched on Julian, but also Bryce Meeker came in the same class, staff, but they were described as sort of the cornerstone of the new line. Have they proven to be those guys?
Those two have a very unique opportunity, in my opinion, right now. When I challenge the offensive line, it starts with those two. And my reasoning for that is those two have played football, whether they should have or not early in their career, they have. Now, the right and earning the right to do that. One of the hard things with their early part of their career is there wasn't much around them to challenge them to be the best version of themselves they can be. And so you talk about changing a culture as a team, you have to also talk about change happens in small groups. And a lot of those position groups it has. To be honest with you, that group still is trying to get to that point. Who's the one that's going to finally draw the line in the sand, or the group that's going to draw the line in the sand and say, this is who we are, this is where we're going? And I think that's a really unique challenge for those two. We've talked about it. Those two know that. I think they would tell you I express that probably in a very unique way at times to those two. But those two are very talented. Those two have the ability to become very good, and those two have what an amazing opportunity to lead this program in 2 years and say, you know what, look what we did. We changed the culture of what it means to play like O-line at Iowa State. One thing I do love is I do love both of those young men. They're young men that do care. They're working really hard. And I think it'll be a really powerful opportunity and a moment if they have that ability to make that change, because they'll have done it without a leadership in front of them to show them how. Number one was turnovers. We started every fall camp meeting. Our number one meeting to start every season is that number. What are those criteria that drive your percentage up to win football games? Those hidden criteria that are really successful. And the number one stat in all of football at any level is obviously the turnover margin. And certainly we were able to take another very positive gain in that opportunity last year, not just the fumble statistic, but just our turnover margin in general. Went from, I think, 60, 70 our first year here to, pushing it finally to being in the top 20. And we could have been even better at times. Our margin for error, the people we play and the consistency of the people we play is still minimal, and we have to understand that, and it all starts with that. So that was number one, and then, we certainly get into a lot of other statistics that, we're still trying to get ourselves to, but that's a fascinating stat to me. For me, it's just, where is the gap? Where is the margin? Where are we still missing the boat? How do we continue to push this forward, and how do we know where to attack? Where do we put our focus into? If it's important, then you got to make it important, and then how is that reflected in the program by what you do, how you practice, all those things. And then we'll use it even weekly. As we prepare for our opponents, is it what drives everything? No. I still think football's a feel game in the moment, but I think there's some great statistics out there that can help you guide and navigate your football team. After our last regular season last year, I was in conflict in two ways. Part of it was I wanted to do everything in my power to push that senior class and give them the right to go win this football game, and that's what we did. But I think the other conflict of me was knowing, how do we grow? What's the next step for this program? Win or lose in Memphis, we got to get on that plane, we got to come back, and this program's everything's got to be focused on taking the next step. I started to get excited about some of those guys that hadn't played, some of those redshirt guys, excited about, where I thought the future could go. But also, at that time we had no idea about Kyle. There was also there was a little bit of uneasiness with our football team with where we were. But knowing that we were still a really young football team, and I couldn't wait to come back, get in the weight room, get a plan for the offseason that best fit this team. The number one challenge was squashing any ego to think we did something or we accomplished something. There was still a lot left on the table, and there was a lot of areas that needed to get fixed and needed to grow. And the compliment goes to, I think, that sense of urgency. To our players felt that sense of urgency from the time we got in the locker room there and got on the bus and the plane to come home to really when they came back a week later from their break that they got. And they've attacked it that way, and I appreciate that, and so does our coaching staff. I think one of the neat things about our level of football is you have the ability to create this multiplicity to what you do, because the rules allow you to do that. Still being able to get hands-on offensive guys, still being able to do different things. And I think speed is such a huge piece of that, whether it's the D-line level or whether it's the secondary level. So I think that the thing that we have gotten is we've gotten faster. I think we have got the ability to continue to add some dynamic pieces to the puzzle. Still about critical situations in defensive football. And I think the neat thing for us is we're going to have the ability to show a lot of different things and help put ourselves in the best situation to eliminate matchup concerns that maybe would exist in the game, but also give us the ability to create matchups for success from a defensive standpoint. I think that's what's really fun about my job is how does each player tick? What we do is what every high school teacher in America is trying to do is engage and understand how their student learns, and then providing them the tools and the resources to be the best learner that they can be in the classroom. Everybody's different. You're talking perfect two ends of the spectrum of how they learn, how they approach day-to-day life, how they approach it. But you cut them open, they're the same kid, and they've got worlds of potential. How I have to learn how and what makes them different, and then how do I challenge them to be the best version of themselves they can be. And I've already seen this, is their legacy of great players is really good, but there's some great talent in that room right now, and their legacy to come back someday and say, hey, you know what, how those guys work, how those guys play, what their attention to detail is, I was part of that for those guys. I helped those guys get it started. And again, I think that's where we're talking in this program. That's when you got a football program rather than a football team. Both Brian and DeAndre, that's one thing I love about both of those guys. Those guys have given way more of themselves than they've ever taken from the program. And I think it's got a chance to be reflected this year, because I think that group is going to be critical. Those young guys now are a little bit older and have a chance to really help us and create some of those defensive matchups for us in a positive way. If anybody's ever watched us, we're always evolving. I'll take the top 4 or 5 teams offensively that I think in collegiate football, and each coach will get one of those teams, break them down and study them. We'll do the same thing in the NFL, and then when we get off to start spring practice, we'll then take that information and almost clinic ourselves, and we've done that for the last 10 years we've done that. And so one of the things that I think is really big is, we're always then adapting, and you've heard me say this, players, formations, plays. Who are your players, what formations you get, and what plays you run. But I think it's great for our coaches to learn the game and continue to pull it in. It's great for all of us to come back and say, here's what's going on. And I think all those things have always helped us because you just never know, really even until midway through fall camp, exactly who those players are, and now how do you adjust a scheme to benefit them, and you better have a pretty good pool to help yourself out do that.
I had a really big team bonding thing whenever you went down and helped out with the Marshalltown tornado.
That moment, we had a team activity that Saturday morning, and that we were gonna do, and, it was actually a couple of our seniors, Julian Good-Jones and a junior and a couple of other, our group that said, hey, should we cancel this, should we go do this, and talking to some of our leadership team, some of those guys, and it was just like, this is a no-brainer. That's when I knew, no matter what happens this season, we've got a really good group of kids. That doesn't give you anything, doesn't give you wins or losses or anything like that, but what it does give you is it gives you a chance. And I watched those kids work, and I watched those kids get back and interact. And what was powerful is not only watching our kids do that, but was watching this town who is devastated. The entire community is out there helping each other and working with each other hand in hand. Our job as coaches is to continue to foster a culture where our kids have the opportunity to grow, not just as football players, but as young men. I thought it was really powerful just to watch our kids interact with not only with each other, but with this community, no matter where it is. I think any time that there's a young man that comes into the program, starts to have some success, and then you start to recruit somebody else from that area, 18 to 22-year-old kids, they're not lying. So the nice thing is they're going to tell you what's going on, and when they can communicate that to their friends or to, maybe somebody in their community, I think that's really important. I do think that's helped us in some of our recruiting, not just the coaching aspect, but our players being able to say, hey, this is what's going on in our football program. Greg's background was a high school quarterback. I really like guys that were the high school quarterback. No matter what position they end up playing, there's something about when your high school coach trusts you to have the ball in your hand in every play, that there's just something leadership-wise about you that gives you a chance to, I think, really project. That's one thing that Greg has given us. He's a communicator. He's a leader, and he brings kind of an anchor. The position we're asking to play, safety, games spread out so much. It's those safeties that have to be elite communicators. And I think that's what we saw this spring from him, is taking great ownership and great communicative skills. I think that's the biggest thing about Greg that we're all excited about, and he's certainly really done a great job of what we've asked him so far, and look forward to watching him play. What does this young quarterback group look like and feel like? And to me, I think there's very high-end potential in all the young men that are getting reps at that position. There's the potential to continue to challenge our football program to go forward. That quarterback position, as we all know, is critical to the success of your team. I feel really confident about, just even in 4 days, about it, the skills, the characteristics, and the traits that those guys have, and I think it's going to be a really high-end competition. Kyle's leading it, and then everybody else, great competition, and you feel it, and you see it, and that's good to have in your program. I've got 4 kids. If I could have one more, I'd take Josh. That's how I like Josh Knipper. He didn't get here until mid-June. I went and kind of watched him run the stadium steps his first Friday. I think Josh almost, passed out on the stadium steps, and I'm like, maybe it'll be a little bit farther away, and then we walk out to the first game and he's starting. He was probably our most efficient lineman last year. And when I come back now and I watch him, he is kind of part of, just like Julian and just like Bryce, he's a guy that has unbelievable leadership traits. I know what we're going to get from Josh. He's going to be the best version of himself every day he walks out to practice. And when you get that, you trust that student athlete. He has got the utmost trust from me, our coaching staff, and I think really his teammates. So I think he's an anchor to the success of our program. We can't control what anybody says about us outside of our walls, but we can control how we handle our day-to-day operation. And I think that ego is the only thing that allows us to allow what's said outside of our walls to infiltrate who we are in our own process. That was the biggest challenge, in my opinion, to our off season, was not buying into the positive and still enough negative to say where we are and where we're going. It's hard of a challenge, especially in the world we live in today, right? Everything, social media, all those things out there, everything's the news cycle of everything coming at you 100 miles an hour, and that's hard. And the only way to handle it is handle it head on. You talk about it, you address it, and you bring those situations right to the fact of our kids all the time. And I think that's one thing our staff does a really good job of. That's how we've addressed last year. That's kind of how we addressed, you know, anything of positive or negative that's set outside of our walls. And we worry about being successful one day at a time. And, you know, the winning and losing at some point will take care of itself.